Have you ever wondered why people like Keanu Reeves, Barack Obama, or Jon Stewart always seem to earn respect in situations where others would easily become victims of public attack? Is it because they're famous, wealthy, powerful, so no one dares to insult them? Not exactly. In fact, they've all been targets of public ridicule, mocked on live television, or pushed into awkward corners by curious crowds. But what makes people admire them isn't some fierce comeback. It's the way they don't respond, the way most people would. They don't get angry, they don't tense up, they don't lower themselves just to strike back. They simply say one thing softly, calmly, with a touch of humor, a touch of steel, and it's enough to make the other person freeze, enough to hush the entire room, enough to draw the line again, without ever raising their voice. That's why in this video, Stoic App won't just hand you clever phrases, but grounded choices rooted in the spirit of Stoicism, so you can preserve your calm and your dignity whenever you're disrespected. Whether it's at work, within family, or in the noise of social media, you won't need to shout to be heard. Just one sentence at the right time, with the right presence is all it takes. If you've ever felt unsettled when someone disrespected you, this video is for you. And if you know someone who could use a way to hold steady in silence, don't hesitate to share it with them. 1. Oh, you're having a rough day, aren't you? I once witnessed a middle-aged man do this, and it was a moment I could never forget. That evening, during a close-knit dinner gathering, an old friend, probably a little too drunk, made a snide remark about his family in front of everyone. The air froze. Some people exchanged glances, some chuckled awkwardly, others seemed to wait for him to react, as if that would prove his strength. But he didn't blush with anger, didn't slam the table, didn't talk back. He simply smiled faintly, put his glass down, and said, "Oh, looks like today hasn't been your best day." Then he turned to continue the conversation with someone else, as if nothing unusual had just happened. No one lost face, but everyone in that room understood who had remained the most grounded. Chances are you've been in a moment like that too. You're sitting in a meeting, at a dinner table, or in a casual conversation. Everything is flowing just fine, until someone says something that suddenly changes the tone. Maybe it's a biting joke, or a seemingly harmless comment with a hidden edge. And when that line lands, you can feel the attention quietly shifting toward you. A moment of expectation, a slight tension in the air. It's as if everyone is silently asking, "So, what will you do now?" In moments like that, most of us tend to choose one of three reactions. We either lash out, laugh it off awkwardly, or stay silent while resentment builds up inside. And though these choices may look different, they all lead to the same place. You've handed someone else the power to shape your mood, your emotional state. You've stepped into a game you didn't ask to play. There's another way, lighter on the surface, but far deeper within. You can look at them steady, composed, not a hint of hostility, and gently say, "Oh, you're having a rough day, aren't you?" It's not sarcasm, and it's not surrender. It's a mirror held up just long enough for them to catch a glimpse of the storm inside themselves, without you casting judgment. You're not pretending the disrespect didn't happen, but you're also not giving them what they came for: your anger, your reaction, or your hurt. Instead, you offer a soft reminder that what they just expressed may have nothing to do with you. Maybe it came from a tension they haven't released, a failure they haven't processed, a sense of inferiority they don't even realize they're carrying. And you just happen to be standing in the way. The philosopher Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you that defines you, but how you respond to it." That seemingly simple sentence is the foundation of the calm that Stoics spend their lives cultivating. You are not your anger. You are not someone else's words. You are the one who chooses how to respond, and that choice is what builds your dignity. Barack Obama has embodied this approach many times. In the 2008 campaign, when a reporter threw him a loaded question about his lack of experience, he didn't bite. He smiled, tilted his head slightly, and replied, "Well, let's let actions be the evidence." In that moment, instead of being dragged into a useless argument, he elevated the conversation calm, self-possessed, and completely out of reach from emotional manipulation. Using this line doesn't make you weak or evasive. In fact, it requires real strength because you have to be grounded enough not to let your ego speak first. In the workplace, on social media, even within your family places where words are often used as unintentional weapons, this kind of response is like cold water poured over a spark just about to become a fire. The best way to say it isn't with a cold voice, but with quiet empathy, as if you truly hope they'll feel better soon. No sarcasm, no moral superiority, just a choice to let their behavior dictate your emotional world, and a gift you offer them a rare chance to see themselves without being attacked. In a world where reacting quickly is praised as instinct, the one who dares to slow down, who stays composed, who responds with a question free of blame, becomes the one who quietly takes the lead. And sometimes, just that one sentence is oft, but perfectly timed is enough to stop the other person in their tracks. Not because you won, but because they realize they no longer have power over you. 2. I'll leave that sentence right here and move on. There was a time when a friend sent me a message. It wasn't exactly offensive, nor was it a blunt criticism, just a vague sentence, playfully worded but sharp enough to make me pause. Something about it felt off, like it was written to test my reaction more than to truly have a conversation. And right in that moment, I stood at a familiar crossroads. To respond immediately, fire back with a sharp line to show I couldn't be taken lightly, or to ignore it, pretend I hadn't seen it and carry an uneasy feeling with me the entire day. But that time, I chose something else. I put the phone down, took a breath, and quietly thought to myself, I'll leave that sentence right here and move on. That was all it took. You don't need to turn every arrow into a battle. No need to explain, to defend, or to prove anything. Just pick up the arrow, place it on the ground, and keep walking whole, untouched by things unworthy of your energy. This sentence, when spoken aloud, is also an incredibly powerful response without raising your voice. For instance, in a meeting, when someone intentionally throws a demeaning remark at you in front of others, you can look at them calm and unwavering and say, I'll leave that sentence right here and move on. Not aggressive, not weak, but a quiet declaration. I choose not to carry that. I have the right to keep my mind clear, free from what others try to unload when they don't have the courage to face it themselves. The philosopher Seneca once wrote, "The very first thing a fool expects from you is a reaction. Silence is the strongest blow. This silence is not avoidance. It's a strike without force. A graceful refusal. I'm not playing this game." I once saw a young CEO embody this perfectly. During a strategy presentation, a senior board member, clearly hostile, made a sarcastic jab about her leadership experience. She paused, looked him directly in the eyes and said, "I'll leave that sentence right here. Shall we return to the main point?" The room fell silent for 2 seconds, and the momentum shifted entirely to her. Not because she struck back, but because she refused to be pulled down. This sentence was also used differently, but with equal weight by someone who defines quiet strength. Keanu Reeves, in an interview, once said, "I'm at a stage in life where I just quietly go, 'Ah, so that's how you see it,' and move on. No rebuttal, no debate, just a soft refusal to carry it." And it's that calm restraint that makes people pause and rethink. You can use this sentence anywhere, in a tense meeting, under a post filled with veiled comments, or at a family dinner when someone suddenly brings up an old story to mock you. Anywhere words appear that don't deserve to stay with you, you have the right to let them go. No reaction, no explanation. Just choose a door and walk through it with your mind still whole. And sometimes, what truly makes others stop and reflect isn't how fiercely you push back. It's how you place what they threw at you gently on the ground and walk away without looking back. Because in a world where everyone argues to be right, the one who knows what's not worth carrying is the one who's already won. 3. Oh, I thought you were joking, but all right, let's just leave it at that. There are moments in everyday life when we hear something that seems like a jokier passing tease, a laugh tucked between sentences, but when you pause and really listen, you realize it's not innocent. It comes with a scrutinizing glance, a smirk, or simply a deliberate nudge at your most sensitive spot: your appearance, your past, your work, or something you're quietly struggling to overcome. It's no longer humor, it's a deliberate jab, disguised in polite laughter. These jokes appear everywhere, in friendly gatherings, at the office, even within your own family. They're not harsh enough for you to respond aggressively, but not light enough to ignore. If you get upset, you're seen as overreacting. If you smile it off, you're giving permission for it to continue. And so you're stuck between two roads: react and lose your balance, or stay silent and absorb it alone. This kind of situation is so common, it's practically part of modern social life. Among friends, at work, even during warm family dinners, those just hurtful enough jokes often surface as a way to test your composure. And when they do, you don't have to break the moment with anger. You don't have to retreat in discomfort either. You can simply tilt your head, offer a faint smile, keep your gaze steady and say, "Oh, I thought you were joking, but all right, let's just leave it at that." That line is like silk wrapped around steel. It's not just a response, it's a quiet declaration. I saw that, I understood it, and I'm drawing a line. No shouting, no retaliation. Just enough for them to know. You won't be easily pulled into some shady little game under the name of harmless fun. More importantly, while soft in tone, this sentence is a clear boundary reasserted. They thought they were joking, but you remind them, you're not someone who lets things slide so easily. You keep the surface light, but behind that silk is a door quietly closing, soft, yet firm. They may still laugh, but they'll tread more carefully, because now they know you're the one choosing when it ends, not them. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, "Don't let your mind become a battlefield for others to plant in." A quote that sounds like it belongs to war but fits perfectly in these very human moments. When you let a spiteful joke take root in your mind, you hand over the reins of your emotions. But when you face it directly and draw a quiet end to it, you take back control. I've witnessed two classic examples. Once, Jon Stewart, the comedian and talk show host, was on air when a guest made a jab about his cartoonish appearance. Without flinching, without overreacting, Jon simply tilted his head, smiled and replied, "Oh, I thought you were joking, but all right, let's just leave it at that." The audience burst into laughter, not because of the jab, but because of Jon's graceful yet razor-sharp comeback. And from that moment on, no one joked about him that way again. Another time, live on television, veteran journalist Anderson Cooper was mocked by a politician who said, "It's surprising how smart you're trying to sound." Anderson smiled, eyes still calm and serious, and said, "Oh, I'll just assume that was a joke." No need for a heated retort. Those words alone made the other man pause. The tone of the interview shifted. and the rest of the conversation moved forward free from further jabs. Your eyes, your smile, your tone, they're all tools. But what makes this sentence so powerful is your attitude. You're not reacting from hurt, but from awareness. You're not stepping back, but you're not stepping forward to attack either. You're simply standing still and drawing a line. This sentence is especially effective in close relationships where you don't want to break the bond, but you also can't allow someone to keep crossing the line with careless behavior. It lets you preserve your self-respect without forcing the other person into shame. It's just humorous enough to keep the mood intact and just clear enough to set a boundary. When you can protect your dignity while keeping the peace you've already grown beyond the one who tried to provoke you. And in this world, that kind of growth is exactly what sets you apart. If you've ever been in one of those moments, a joke that made you smile and ache at the same time, using this response and observe what changes. And if you feel like sharing, tell your story in the comments. Who knows? Maybe your moment will be the quiet wake-up call someone else needed. 4. I'll file that in the archive of unnecessary opinions. Sometimes, you don't need to be harsh to set a boundary. Some people do it with a smile, like Keanu Reeves. Once, during a film promotion press conference, he was asked a loaded question. The reporter implied that he was too simple, lacking depth to handle serious roles. It wasn't a question, it was a blow wrapped in professional disguise. But Keanu didn't get angry. He smiled, gave a slight nod and said, "Oh, thanks for the perspective. I'll keep that somewhere far in the back of my mind." Not a sharp rebuttal, but not acceptance either. A feather-light response, yet unmistakably clear, and the reporter couldn't continue. Sometimes, people say things that make you uncomfortable, not because they're overtly rude, but because they coat their comments in something called honesty. A remark about your appearance, your lifestyle, your personal decisions, things they claim you should hear because I'm just giving you some feedback. But you know full well it's not concern. It's a subtle intrusion into your values. In those moments, you don't need to get angry. You don't need to tense up or prove the opposite. Just smile a soft smile, like you've received a message you didn't ask for, and say, "I'll file that in the archive of unnecessary opinions." It may sound like a joke, but in truth, it's a carefully wrapped message. You're not denying their existence, but you're not letting them settle in your mind longer than necessary either. The image of a mental trash folder where you place words that are unhelpful, non-constructive, and out of place might make others laugh, but it also makes them realize you're not easily shaken, and you're not letting people dump verbal garbage into your inner world. This sentence becomes even more powerful when paired with a calm demeanor. No sarcasm, no bitterness, just a gentle notice. You have a filter, and not everything people send your way will be saved. Stoicism teaches, no one has the right to live in your head if you don't let them. That's a kind of sovereignty not over land, but over the mind. The Stoic doesn't claim control by shouting. They establish boundaries with stillness, with the ability to choose what's allowed into their inner space. I once witnessed a similar moment when a friend of many, a woman, often subjected to unkind remarks about her fashion choices, responded calmly to an inappropriate comment at a party by saying, "Thanks for your input, but I trust my filter is working just fine." No one was humiliated, but from then on, no one felt the need to comment on her again. In daily life, from the workplace to social media, from boardrooms to family dinners, this sentence is a gentle yet decisive way to assert your inner sovereignty. It lets you filter not by avoidance, but by deliberate clarity. You don't have to respond to every word. You don't have to keep every suggestion. And when you're calm enough to say it lightly but clearly, the other person is left wondering, should I say that again? You don't destroy them. You don't strike back. You simply remind them with a smile that this is not a free Dropbox for opinions. And that, more than anything else, is what makes them stop. 5. Thank you. I'll consider, not considering that. Some advice arrives wrapped in kindness, but inside it carries a layer of judgment you never asked for. I remember once, during an interview, Anderson Cooper was asked about his career direction with a tone that bordered on condescending. The interviewer tried to sound well-meaning. "Don't you think you should try something with a little more depth?" Cooper smiled, nodded slightly, and said, "Thank you for the opinion. I'll consider, not considering that." The room burst into laughter. The questioner fell silent, and the conversation moved on as if the jab had never happened. That sentence sounded light, but it shut the door with a quiet finality. Because sometimes you don't need to argue, you just need to filter. This is exactly what separates this chapter from the last. If the previous chapter addressed judgment disguised as honesty, then this one is about the opposite. When someone puts on the mask of well-intended advice to insert themselves into your personal life, they'll start with lines like, "I'm only saying this because I care," or "If I were you, I would," followed by a string of directions, evaluations, or even warnings, none of which you actually asked for. In that moment, you don't need to argue back. You don't need to prove them wrong. You don't even need to reject them outright, because that might only make them feel challenged and double down on trying to convince you. You simply look at them, smile and say, "Thank you. I'll consider, not considering that." A sentence that's half acceptance, half refusal, just enough to avoid sounding rude, but clear enough that they understand. Their advice has been filed far away in your mental cabinet, the one labeled, "Not to be opened anytime soon." The Stoics believed, one who filters thoughts like filtering water will never end up drinking trash. That philosophy doesn't tell you to shut your heart, but to keep your inner filters clean. Not every word deserves a place inside. Not every opinion should be nurtured like a seed. I once witnessed a Mana product director at a tech company receive unsolicited advice from an older colleague. "At your age, I think it's time to settle down. Stop chasing all that dreamy startup stuff." He didn't argue. He simply smiled, put down his pen, and said, "Thank you. I'll consider, not considering that." The room fell quiet. The colleague seemed about to continue but didn't. I think about moments like that when people offer advice about how you live, the career you choose, the person you love, even how you raise your children despite never having walked a single day in your shoes. And you answer not with hostility, but with calm boundaries. You don't raise your voice. You just quietly reserve the right to decide what's worth your attention. It's not about rejecting someone. It's about refusing to let others define what belongs in your mind. Because in the end, you can't stop people from speaking, but you can always choose what stays. If well-intended advice has ever cost you a night's sleep, leave a comment. Where would you file it? 6. Oh, if that's the best you've got, I guess this conversation is over. There are moments in communication, whether in the workplace, on social media, or right at the family dinner table, when you'll encounter someone who deliberately pushes boundaries. They're not just sharing a viewpoint, they're escalating, provoking, aiming to wound, to start a war of words. The sarcasm sharpens, the tone gets harsher, and the eyes more confrontational. The whole room holds its breath, and everyone, including you, is waiting to see. How will you respond? Normally, we feel the urge to fire back to prove we're not weak, to defend our pride. But doing so only makes you the second actor in a scene you never agreed to be part of. Because the more you react, the more you give them exactly what they want. chaos, attention, and a front-row seat inside your mind. In moments like that, there's one line soft as air, but strong enough to end it. Oh, if that's the best you've got, I guess this conversation is over. No raised voice, no bitterness. You simply look at them calm, composed, and leave that line behind like a gentle reminder. You're no longer on the same communication level. They may keep going, but now they're just monologuing because you've stepped out of the game. I recall a classic moment from Jon Stewart, the renowned host and commentator. In a televised debate, his guest kept interrupting, derailing the discussion, and dragging it into a spiral of personal attacks. Jon paused, stayed silent for a few seconds, then looked straight ahead, smiled, and said, "If that's the level we're at, then there's really nothing more to say." It wasn't a punch, it was a mirror. The guest fell silent, the audience understood, and the show went on Jon's terms. Philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Their recklessness can't harm you unless you let it." You can't control what others say, but you can always control the door that allows it into your inner space. And sometimes, the strongest act is knowing when to step away. I think of more familiar moments when a close friend, a co-worker, or even a family member uses words to test your patience. They want to see how far they can go. They're probing, wondering if you'll snap back like you did before. But this time, you don't. You just smile gently and say, "Oh, if that's the best you've got, I guess this conversation is over." It may sound polite, it may sound light, but in truth, it's a closed door, a clear, quiet statement that no more negativity will be accepted here. It defines the boundary without making a scene. You're not walking away. You're not losing. You're simply refusing to continue a conversation that no longer has value. And that choice, the reaction is the highest form of self-control. Because sometimes reclaiming your mental space doesn't mean standing up to fight. It means standing up and walking out. Have you ever ended a toxic conversation with calm composure? If so, share your line, because someone out there might need that exact clarity today. And if this chapter spoke to you, don't hesitate to leave a reflection or share it with someone who's struggling. It might be the timely reminder they've been waiting for. 7. I'm practicing slow reactions, and you just helped me get better. Not every insult comes in the form of a direct word. Sometimes it's just a smirk with a hidden message, a calculated joke, or a glance that's meant to get under your skin. Maybe it's an old friend deliberately bringing up a time you failed, a family member aiming straight at the weakness you're trying to hide, or a lover, mid-argument, slipping in a line that hurts just to win. They know your buttons, and they just pushed one. Usually, when put in that position, our first instinct is to defend, to react, to fight back. Because reacting makes us feel like we're taking back control. But in truth, the moment we snap back is the moment we lose our advantage. There is another way, not loud, not submissive, but powerful enough to make the other person stop. I'm practicing slow reactions, and you just helped me get better. It sounds like a soft sentence, but in reality, it flips the dynamic. You're not offended, you're training. You're not someone dragged into an emotional game. You're the one observing yourself inside a larger journey. I remember once, during a live stream, Ryan Holiday, the author known for his work on Stoicisms, asked a rather hostile question. So do you really think you're a philosopher, or just a guy cashing in on old wisdom? Ryan didn't deflect. He didn't look hurt. He just smiled and said, "Thanks. I'll take that as a chance to practice composure." No criticism, no sarcasm, but everyone watching understood. He had just declined to play the game without backing away from it. The philosopher Epictetus once wrote, Every discomfort is a training session for the soul. And it's true, every time someone tries to provoke you, you can choose to react or to evolve. This sentence is like holding a mirror up to both people. You see yourself improving, and they see their attempt to offend rendered useless. In close relationships, friendships, lovers, family, this is one of the most powerful tools, because you can't stop people from testing you, but you can show them. The way you respond has changed. The best delivery? Soft, a little humorous, as if you truly appreciate the chance to strengthen your steadiness. And then you move on. No anger in your pocket, no bitterness left behind. Just one more quiet rep in your training. The last time someone pushed your button show, did you respond? Share a line you once used to stay composed, because chances are someone else needs that calm from you today. 8. I think that doesn't deserve a response. Some things just aren't worth replying to. And sometimes the only way not to get pulled into a needless fight is to say nothing at all. I once watched a televised panel where Jon Stewart, the veteran host, was openly criticized by a guest who mocked his interview style, implying he was just a comedian, not serious enough to discuss real politics. The room paused for a beat, but Jon didn't get angry. He didn't defend himself. He simply looked at the guest for a few seconds, nodded slightly, and moved on to the next topic. No justification, no bitterness. But everyone in the room, including the guest, understood. That attack never touched him. The sentence, "I think that doesn't deserve a response," doesn't always need to be spoken aloud. It's in your gaze, in the way you exhale slowly, in the choice not to throw another word into a space already too noisy. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "When you stay silent before nonsense, you've already made a clear statement about your values." Silence is not retreat, it is a decision, a wordless declaration that you will not be manipulated by someone else's lack of control. Picture a meeting where someone suddenly throws a bitter jab at you, without context, without cause. Everyone turns, waiting for your reaction. But you simply smile, nod, and return to the main topic as if nothing worth holding on to had just been said. And you know what that moment is its own kind of counterpunch, because you refuse to let your emotions be shaped by someone else. In the world of social media, where everyone is racing for the last word, silence is a lost art. But it remains one of the most powerful tools of the Stoic. No announcements, no defense. You simply don't respond. How should it look? Steady, eyes not mocking, quiet, not cold, walking away, not storming out. When you choose to keep your energy instead of spending it on petty wins, you're telling the world, "I know what deserves my attention and what doesn't." Next time someone tries to drag you into a meaningless argumentao, will you respond with a speech, a counterattack, or a silence that makes them hear themselves? You've just walked through 8 quiet phrases, each one gentle yet powerful enough to draw a line between someone who gets easily hurt and someone who owns themselves in every situation. Not to make you cold, not to turn you into a master of comebacks, but to remind you, not everyone deserves your reaction. And sometimes just one sentence timed right, spoken with presence, is enough to silence the noise and make others reflect on their own words. Because in a loud world where everyone is fighting to be right, it's stillness paired with a quiet smile that makes people remember you the longest. If you found these phrases helpful, share this video with a friend who might need to learn how to stay calm in chaos. And if you want to keep sharpening your composure, your clarity, and your inner strength in daily interactions, don't forget to follow the channel. This is Stoic App, and I'm honored to walk beside you in the journey ahead, the journey of mastering yourself through calm, not noise,